Sidor Lev Shalem.
Ashri Shivitecha, Odialu Chasela, Ashri Ham Shikachalo, Ashri Ham Shadonai Ilhav, Tell David, Arim Teilat Adonai Daber P, Vivarech Basar Shim Kojilam Vaed, Vanachnaberach Yah, Metavilam Hallelujah, Vathian Goel. V'yatakadosh Yoshev Til Israel, Karzel Zev Yamar, Kadosh Kadosh Kadosh, Adonai Tzvah Mecharetz Kivodo. Vatisayni Ruach V'yashma Acharei Kol Rash Gadol, Baruch Kavod Adonai Mimekomo. Adonai Mloch Le'olam Vaed, Adonai Mloch Adonai Le'olam. Vayivdechu b'chayoda Eshemecha, Kilo Zav Tadorishecha Adonai, Adonai Chavetaman Zidko, Yagdil Torah Ve'adir, Yigadal V'Kadash Shemech Rabbah, Yalimadi V'Rakir Teh, V'Yamlich Malchuteh, B'chayechon V'Yomechon, V'Chayedechol Beit Yisrael, Bagalav Izman Kari, V'Imru, Amen, Yehesh Shemech Rabbah Mavarach, L'Olam L'Olam Elamaya, Yiparach V'Shabach, Yipar V'Toram V'Naseh, V'Tadar V'Taleh V'Talal, Shemech Kudsha Berichu, Le'Olam Mikol B'Chatav, Shirata, Tish B'Chatav Nechamata, Damiram Elam Avimru, Amen. Dani Tfilati L'Chadnai Latzon, Elohim Brochasecha, Anani Bemed Ishecha, Vahibi Zwaharon, Vayomer Moshe, Kumadonai V'Yafuzo Yevecha, V'Anusu Mesanecha Mipanecha, Kimitzion Tete Torah, Dvardonai Mirushalayim, Baruch Shatan Torah Lemo Yisrael, Bikdu Shato. Gadilu Ladonai Iti, in Roma Mashmo Yachdav, L'Chadnai Hagidu Lav,
This is being broadcast, right?
There we go.
Thank you. Okay, good. Let's see. See where it is now. Hold on. Right. Right in the right place.
Need the other mic too? Or are we good?
Tata Mobi Israel Lechenu Tasuraka Miwaratzon. Venomar
Amen.
Amen. Hagugotel, the Hinu Chabod Latora Yamod.
Aharon Yitzhak ben Shmuel.
Aharon Yitzchak ben Shmuel, Ali Harishon Habaruch Shana Santor Ali Moisrael Big Tishato.
V'yatem b'adaveikim b'adonaychem chaim
Vetem
kulechem.
Abikim Relechem, Chayim Kulechem, Hayom, Parshat Vayetze.
Baruch Hu Adonai HaMvarach.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach Le'olam.
Baruch Adonai V'rach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen. Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva vayelech harana vayivka b'makom vayalen sham ki bo hashemesh vayikach mi'avnei hamakom vayasem mira'ashotav vayishkav hamakom hahu vayachalom hine sulam mutzav arza v'rosho magia hashamayma v'hine malach Elohim olim v'yoredim bo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Hamod. Yechiel Matitayu ben Harav. Chaim Eliyahu.
V'nechama Rezel.
Menachem Rezel Aliyah Shniha.
Thank you. Baruch Adonai Barach. Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Do'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'hinei Adonai nitzav alav vayomar ani Adonai Elohei Avraham avicha v'Elohei Yitzchak ha'aretz asher ata shochev aleha lecha ednena ulzarecha v'haya zarecha kafar ha'aretz u'faratzta yama v'kedem v'tzafon v'negba v'nivrechu v'cha kol mishpachot adamo v'zarecha v'hinei anochi imach Ushmarticha v'chol asher telech v'hashivoticha el ha'adama hazot ki lo ezovecha ad asher imasiti et asher dibarti lach v'yikatz Yaakov mishnato v'yomer achen yesh Adonai b'makom hazeh v'anachi lo yadati v'yirav v'yomer manorah hamakom hazeh ein zeh ki beit Elohim v'zeh shar hashamayim. Amen. You want me? Or you want
That's
to
right.
get someone else?
I was trying to remember who I'd given it to. Yamod.
Meir ben Eliezer Leib v'chana.
Meir ben Eliezer Lai v'chana l'aliyah shlishit.
Page 168, verse 18.
Okay. I lost my place here.
Bayash came.
Yep.
Yeah, so. Got it.
Baruch Hu Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Vayishken Yaakov baboker vayikach et ha'even asher sam mira'ashotav vayasem ota matzeva vayitzok sheman al rosha vayikra shem hamakom hahu Beit El ve'ulam lu shem ha'ir lavrishona vayidar Yaakov neder lemor imya Elohim imadi ushmorani baderech hazeh asher anochi holech v'natan li lechem lechol uveget li ubosh v'shavti v'shalom el beit avi v'haya Adonai li Elohim v'evan hazot asher samti matzeva yeh beit Elohim v'chol asher titen li aser asrenu lach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Can you truly help dress the Torah, please? Hamod Hamagia Tamod Hagolelet. Please rise for the lifting of the Sefer Torah. V'zois haTorah asher son Moshe v'chei Yisrael
al pi Adonai v'yad Moshe. Eitz chaim hi lamachazikim ba v'tomechei ha'merushar. Eitz chaim hi lamachazikim ba v'tomechei ha'merushar. Tirachel adorkei Noam ve'oiti motel shalom. Tirachel adorkei Noam ve'oiti motel shalom. I'm gonna have Warren step all the way over here would be actually helpful. And I'll give you this microphone in front of you so that you can be shared, okay? You can bring it over there.
You're gonna say
Want me to see the,
the mount, and then I'll say
okay.
a few words.
All right, so
Okay.
then I'm gonna borrow this from you for a second.
Okay.
Okay. All right, this male is in honor of Esther Blum. This is how many years of yahrzeit? This is the third yahrzeit for Esther. We are on page 73 if you're following along in the daily book. Mali rachamim, shochain b'merumim, hametzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina, v'malot kedoshim u'torim, kezohar harakim hasirim, lenishmat. Esther Iris. בת דבורה ואהרון, שלך ליהודה בגן עדן תהי מנוחתה, הנבא לרחמים, הסתיריה בסתר כנפיך ליהודה מים, וצרור בצרכים את נשמתה, אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר אמן.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, there's the camera. Okay, so yeah, this is the third yahrzeit of Esther. She was a light unto us. She was a beautiful person with beautiful, kind, loving characteristics. She was a good friend to everybody. She was a loving daughter. And so we miss her dearly, but the thing is that as we say every day, the soul and the spirit survives. The soul and the spirit is not part of the body. It's in the body, but our soul, Esther's. So what I'm saying is that okay, so. Rabbi Kligfield yesterday was talking about people who, after having, gone through something like the Holocaust or a traumatic experience, they become more religious or less religious. Well, I was one of the people that became more religious, and I did a lot of research and investigation into the afterlife, and I became 100% convinced that there is an afterlife. And a lot of this came from studying NDEs. If anybody wants to talk to me about that, I'll be glad to share that information with you. But so what I'm saying is that Esther's spirit is still with us, and she's right here with us in this room. The Lubavitcher Rebbe says that's when the souls especially come close, is during yahrzeit. So Esther, I hope you are having a lot of love and sharing a lot of light and on the other side.
We're in Yehezir Baruch. Esther was indeed a great light, and it will always be an enormous tragedy to this community that even while Esther's spirit remains among us, we never did get to see what Esther would become, who Esther would become, what Esther might have left as an additional imprint on the world. But none of that diminishes the imprint that Esther left while here and while walking the world. We're with you in your heartache, and I really appreciate you sharing so vulnerably. And may Esther's memory continue to be bound up in the bonds of life and present for you whenever you are open to feeling Esther. And I'll ask you to pass the Torah over to Joel, who also has a yard site today. Is there anybody else who's marking yard site today or this week upcoming or past?
The sixth on
The
Friday.
6th, next Friday. Oh, yeah. Okay, so after Joel, let's have you come up. Okay.
El Malarachamim, Shochain Bamramim, Amatim Nechonachona, Tachat Kanfe Hashina, the Malot Kiddushim Matom Kazar, Kiamaz, Hirim, Nishmat, Imi, Morati, Nechamarezel Bat, Menachem Mendel, Bekrindel, Shalchali, Olama, Began Eden, Tehemenuchata, Anabalarachamim, Hasti Rebbe Setakafach, Nafechale Olamim, Mutzor Betorachim, Nishmata, Adonai Nachlata, V'Hanuach B'Shalom Mishkava, V'Nomar, Amen.
Amen. Is there a memory of your mom that you wanted to share with us today?
Yes, it's the 10th yahrzeit of my mom, and leaves a hole in my heart even now, 10 years later. She was a very vivacious personality. Marshall remembers her, and she sang a lot, told a lot of jokes, and you always knew when she was in the room. So I miss you, Mom.
I pray that her soul is also bound up in the bonds of life. And can I say one word about Scrabble? Would that be okay?
She was also a Scrabble champion, and when she left America and made Aliyah to Israel, she joined the Jerusalem Scrabble Club, and where she also became a champion. And she went to Scrabble tournaments in many different cities, and there's a book about Scrabble, and my mother's in the book, including a poem that she wrote about Scrabble is in the Scrabble book. So yes, that's another memory we have. Oh yes.
Well,
Oh yes.
I had the enormous privilege of knowing your mom and getting to play a Scrabble game with her because before I even came out here, I worked at Kochav Yair during the High Holy Day season for a couple of years. And when your mom invited me to play Scrabble, your brother in the background went like this to me, and I had no idea what I was in for. And he was 100% right. I mean, it wasn't even, the differential of several hundred points. But what an honor to have played her. She really was a character. Yehezir Baruch, and thank you for remembering her with us today. I'll have you pass the Torah over to Paige.
I'll bet she would have loved to play with my dad. He's good at Scrabble too. It would have been a great match, yeah.
My grandmother's name was Giddle, Hebrew name Giddle, the English name Gertrude.
Why don't I say the
Yeah.
El Male?
Thank you.
Okay.
Her name's Giddle.
El Mali Rachamim Shochin Bamerhomim Hamze Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Shechina V'malot Kedoshim Utorim Kezohar Rakiyam Hazirim Lenishmat Gittel
Jill Gitzel, Girdle, Gertie Catler.
Gertie Katler Shel Chaleho Lama Began Eden Te Menuchata Anabal Rachamim Astireya Beseter Knafecha The Holamim Utzor Bitzor Chaim Et Nishmata Adonai Unachalata V'Yatunach B'Shalom Al Mishkava V'Nomar Amen. Can you think of one memory of your grandma you'd like to share with us?
Yes, she died, it was 15 years ago on 2008. This will make it 16 years since she left the earth, and she's here in this room right now as we speak. The one thing I remembered was that she had a caramel jar, and while she was in the bathroom smoking cigarettes, she smoked 2 a day. I used to stick my hand in the caramel jar and leave the evidence on the floor, and then when she walked in, she wanted the caramel, and there were none there because they were on the floor of that. So that was my favorite memory because I always got caught for everything I did. The dog treats, taking the dog treats from the doggy jar, and she always cheated in Scrabble. Always has and always will.
I'm glad that you brought her memory to light. Yehezir Baruch. I'll have you actually pass this back to Joey because he's going to lead. We continue in Sidor Lev Shalem on page 221. As we return the Torah to the arks, we remain standing.
Yehallelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado, hodol eretz v'shamayim, vayarim keren le'amo, tilalech ol chasidav, libnei Yisrael am kruvo, hallelujah. The David Mizmor. Unucho Yomar. Ki kachtov natati lachem, tratil ta'azovu, et chaim hiel machalikim bah, v'tomecha meushar, drachet archeno, am chom tivotea shalom, hashivein Adonai elecha v'nashuva, chadesh yameinu kekedem. Ikadal v'kadash, shemech rabah, Belimadi v'rakirteh, v'yamlich machuteh, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayedechol beit Yisrael, b'agalav izman kariv, v'imru, amen. Yeshemech rabam v'arach, v'alam l'olam elam hayah, yitbarach v'shabach, v'par v'tram v'itnaseh, v'tadar v'talev v'talal, shemech t'kudsha berichu. Le'elam min kol birchata, v'shirata, tushbechata, v'nechamata, damiram be'alem avimru, amen.
The whispered private Amidah for Shabbat afternoon begins on page 223. It's recited quietly while standing. If you've not yet completed your own private Amidah, please take your time, continue at your own pace. We continue on page 223 in Sidor Lav Shalem. When we reach the Kedusha on 225, at the end of the Kedusha, we can be seated with the words Ha'el HaKadosh. Right now, I invite you to rise for the repetition, page 223.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elokei Avotenu, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak ve'Elokei Yaakov, Elokei Sarah, Elokei Rivka, Elokei Rachel ve'Elokei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot, Mevi Goel Livnei V'neihem Aman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Chazer Fokedim Moshiach Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Foket Sarah, Atagi Borlam Adonai Mechemitim Matarav Oshia Mashiv Haruach Morid Hagashem Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed Mechemitim Berachamim Rabim Somech Levelim Vropei Cholim Matir Asurim Kaim Munateli Shnei Afar Michamocha Baal Gevurot Umidam Elach Melch Mimit Mchayem Masmiach Yeshua Mene'eman Atalach Chayot Meitim Baruch atah Adonai Mechayem Meitim Nekadesh Shimcha Ba'alam Kashim Shemach Tishim Oto B'Shmei Marom Kakatuv Vayan V'Yechav K'Razeh El Zev Yamar Kadosh 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 Adonai Tzvaot Melchol Ha'aretz Kivodo Lumatam Baruch Yameru Baruch Kivod Adonai Mimakomov Divrei Kodecha Katuv Lemor Yimloch Adonai Le'olam El Hayich Tzion L'dor Vador Hallelujah L'dor Vador Nagid Godlech Al Nitach Nitachim Kiddushatecha Nakdish V'shivcha Eloheinu Mipinu Le'yamush Le'olam Va'ed Kel Melech Gadol V'Kadosh Ata Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh Ata Echad V'Shimcha Echad Umik Yamecha Yisrael Goy Echad Ba'aretz Tiferet Gedula Va'ateret Yeshua Yom Menucha Ukdusha Le'amecha Natata Avraham Yagel Yitzchak Yarnein Yaakov Anav Yanu Chuvo Menuchat Hava Dava Menuchat Emed Ve'emunah Menuchat Shalom Shalva Vashkit Vavetach Menuchat Shalema Shatarot Ebach Yakir Vanecha V'Idu Kimeitecha Menuchatam V'Amenuchatam Yakdishu Et Shemecha Elheinu ve'Avotenu, Ritzevim Nuchatenu, Kadeshenu b'mitzvotecha, V'tein chalkenu b'toratecha, Sabe'enu mituvecha, V'samechenu b'shuatecha, V'taher libeinu yuvdecha be'emet, V'anchilenu Adonai Elheinu, B'avav v'ratzon Shabbat kodshecha, V'yanuchuvah Yisrael, Mekadeshei Shemecha, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat, Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu, B'yamacha Yisrael v'filatam, v'hashevet ha'avodah lidvir beitecha, utfilatam be'avat, t'kabel beratzon, utilatzon tamid, avodah Yisrael amecha, v'techazena eineinu, b'shivacha l'tzion berachamim, Baruch atah Adonai, amachazir shechinato l'tzion, modim anachnu lach, atahu Adonai Eloheinu, v'elhei avotenu le'olam va'ed, tzruchayinu magen yishinu, tahu l'dor v'dor, nodel l'chadun taper tzilatecha, Al Chayinu HaMitzurim Biadecha, V'yanishmotina Pikadolach, V'yanisecha Shebechol Yom Imanu, V'yanifleotecha V'tovotecha Shebechol Et Erev V'avoker V'tohoraim, Atov Kilo Chalur Achamecha, V'hamerachim Kilo Tamu Chasadecha, Me'olam Kivinu Lach, V'al Kulam, Yibrak V'yitram Shipamakini Tamid Olam V'ed, V'chol Achem Yidu Chasel Avi, Aluchim Chabemet, Ha'elishuatim V'zartein Usela, Baruch atah Adonai, Tov Shimcha Luchanai Lehodot. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amechavi Al Kol Shevei Tevel Tasim Le'olam Ki Atahu Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom V'tov Beinecha Levarech et Amecha Yisrael B'chol Eit V'chol Shah B'Shlomecha Baruch atah Adonai Hamevarech et Amo Yisrael B'Shalom Tzidkatecha Tzedek Le'olam V'toratecha Emet V'tidkatecha Elohim ad marom asher asita gedol Elohim michamocha tzidkatecha keharei el mishpatecha tehom rabbah adam uvhema toshia Adonai Yigadav Yigadash Shemeh rabbah V'yalemadi v'rakir teh v'yamlich machu teh b'chayechonu v'yamechonu b'chayedchol beit Yisrael Bagalavis man karivimru. Amen. Yehi shemech rabba mivarach. Le'alam l'olam elemaya. Yitbarach v'shabach. Yitbar v'tram v'naseh. V'dadar v'taleh v'talal. Shemech tkud shaberichu. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran b'alema v'imru. Amen. Tigabal totem votahon d'chol Yisrael kodam avon divishmaya v'imru. Amen. Yeshal amar rabba min shmaya v'chayim. Alin v'kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. O se shalom b'ramav hu ya'aseh shalom. Alin v'kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
We rise for Aleinu 231.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol. Latate gedula liotzer bereshit. Shelo asan k'goy ha'aratzot. Velo samanu k'mish pechot ha'adama. Shelo sam chalkenu kahem. Vigor aleinu k'chol hamonam. Vanachnu korim. Umishtachavim umodim. Lifnei melech. Malchei hamelachim. Hakadosh Baruch Hu Shehu Noteh Shamayim V'Yosei Haaretz Umoshav Yikaro Bashamayim Mima'al Ushchinatu Zo Beguvei Meromim Hu Eloheinu Einod Emet Malkeinu Efazulato Kakatuv B'Torato V'Yadatayim V'Hashivota Live avecha ki Adonai hu Elohim bashamayim mimal ve'al haaretz mitachat einod al kenekave l'cha Adonai Eloheinu li rot mehei rabbi tiferet uzecha l'ha'avir gilu limin haaretz v'ha elilim karoti karitun L'takein olam b'malchut Shaddai v'chol b'nei basar yikreu b'shmecha l'afnot elecha kol rishei aretz yakiru v'yideu kol yishavei tevel ki l'cha tichra kol berech tishava kol ashon l'fanecha Adonai Eloheinu yikreu v'yipolu v'lichvod shimcha yakar yiteinu V'kabelu chulam et ol malchutecha v'timach alehem meher alil amvaid ki ha-malchut shelachahi ulameyad timach bechavod kakatuv b'toratecha Adonai imloch lil amvaid v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol ha'aretz bayom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad u'shmo echad.
Mourner's Kaddish is found on page 232.
Eat gadal, v'it kadash shemech rabah.
Amen.
Bialema divera kiruteh v'amich malchuteh b'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shemech rabah mevarach le'alam l'alamei olamaya. Eat barach v'ish tabach v'it pa'ar v'it romam v'it naseh v'it hadar v'it aleh v'it halal shemech kudsha berichu. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran b'alema v'imru. Amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shmaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'ramav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Amen. Yesher Koach, Joanne leading. Yesher Koach,
Yeah.
Marshall for chanting Torah. Great to be together this afternoon. We are going to study some Torah together. I'll pass out some learning sheets in a little bit, but first, Seudashli sheets, so go nourish yourself a bit. We'll get started with learning in the next 10 minutes or so.
sleeping on Shabbat is a delight. If I don't go to sleep, that's a delight.
Her name's
So I'll see you next week.
but
Good week.
but her Hebrew name is Gideon. She's married to my grandfather, at the Eden, and I remember which princess she was buried. I just remember she was, but this was really hard and I lost her. It was like very difficult. I was in school at the time and and I was pulled out because still wanted to be with her, so I was like saying, I'm just gonna see her. Yeah, I am lucky that I had both of my grandparents. My mom's mom and my dad.
Okay, I'll see you then.
Yeah, the only grandparent I didn't meet was my maternal grandfather, my
I
baby.
didn't have a chance for my Shabbat.
Oh,
I
to, to,
really driving.
Your name after them?
no, I understand it very well. I came home from shul and crawled into bed.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's what keeps, it's what
Yeah,
keeps
that's
me,
named after
you know,
a famous
I'm now
star.
wide-eyed, and the world is beautiful. I had my sleep this afternoon.
Well,
Yeah.
as I said to Seth, Rosh
Yeah,
Hashanah, you know,
I think
it
my
happened.
grandma Gertrude,
You know, Shabbat
named
time.
yeah,
Right.
and grandma Gertie was the one who named it that.
Partially, it's right. Okay, thank you, Joe. Rabbi Tran,
It was when I met my great grandparents.
I missed my Shabbat. Shame my Shabbat time. No, I forgot to start. I'll see you then. Good. Okay, very good. Bye-bye.
Is that the parking garage?
What's that?
Is that the parking garage that keeps making that rumbling?
No, it's just La Cienega Boulevard. It was never quite as intense, but then with the purple line going with the metro, the whole street was dug out. So there's a lot more hollow space for reverberations, and it just feels like shaky all the time a little bit. Yeah,
I was wondering about why it's so shaky here.
it is. It's gotten a lot shakier. My office is like that too.
One of the cars go by, it's like there's an earthquake.
Very, very intense
Feels like
shaking.
there's an L.
Yeah.
Feels like what?
It feels like there's an L.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, close, but the whole street has been dug out. Yeah.
It's how fun this
Oh,
year.
it's so hollow, that's why it's so shaky. Why are they digging out the street? Are they building a subway here too?
There are two things. There's but most of them are moving the lines, apparently, like the utility lines underground as
Right.
part of the project. So
What are they doing that for?
Well, they're also increasing, one of the reasons we couldn't build is there was gonna be a $3 million charge to build electrical lines adequate to the large school building that was being planned.
Oh, yeah.
Now the building across the street is paying for that.
that's right.
Now, why a building has to pay for the electric lines, I don't understand.
I will never understand why the initiating project is the one responsible, but someone snuck that into some bylaws somewhere.
Oh,
I mean,
definitely.
it's crazy, you know, what responsibility should be electrical. They're gonna sell you the electricity, they're gonna make the money back.
And if it's not going to be the electric company, it should be the highest users or any project that requires a change.
Excuse me, isn't Gittel a Yiddish name?
Yeah.
It's not a Hebrew name, it's a Yiddish name.
What?
Gittel's a Yiddish name.
Yeah.
Giddle?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's a Yiddish
Yeah,
name,
but-
it's not a Hebrew name.
I know
Yiddish.
Yiddish.
Yiddish and Hebrew, were both considered Jewish names.
Okay, so it can be Yiddish also?
Yeah. So my grandfather called her Giddle. And that's why my dad used to call her Gert, but I used to call her Giddle.
Well, actually, it's quite a common name.
Her middle name was Rose.
Oh, nice.
Gertrude Rose Cutler.
How old was she when she got
98. 98. She passed away. 98. She was 90. She was 98.
Wow.
And well, she stopped smoking, but she smoked like probably one cigarette a day, but she was a constant smoker. Just had like one cigarette a day, go down to the bathroom and smoke, and then she was done. But she did quit. She did quit before she went to the Jewish Home for the Aged, so she did quit.
Every time I go by,
She wasn't a heavy duty smoker, which is good. Well, it was just like after my grandfather passed away, that's when she was throwing in more.
person in your family to visit. What do you have from David? How's he coming along?
He's good. He's, after this semester, he's gonna go one more semester.
And she lives a healthy life.
Great.
The founder of the social tool, the Churro social tool in New York, founded by Steve Huon. And Steve is teaching a class for you.
That's
My
free.
grandma also liked to crochet. She had these slippers that she crochet.
Right.
This is called Break Your Hip. She made these slippers, and I don't know how she did it, but she had a carpet, and at least she didn't fracture a hip or anything.
Right.
But yeah, they were dangerous slippers, and she made a pair for me. At least I didn't break my hip when I was young.
That's good.
Yeah, that was like her thing. To crochet.
Wow.
Yeah, my grandmother was a real, she was really funny. When we go to Jack in the Box, right? She always gets her senior coffee, the dollar senior coffee, and then she used to take my French fries and eat them. And split them. I remember going shopping with her. That was fun, going to the mall. Going to get her hair done, getting her nails done.
All right.
Move this up, okay?
I'm trying to think if anybody who was here was also at my Shabbat morning teaching this morning, but I think two people were. Okay. I kind of wanted to reteach it because I was having so much fun with it. I could have taught it 4 times over. It was one of those great set of sources on the topic of the twins who were Rotzitzim in the belly, and Rivka seeking a prophecy. And the reason I mention it is that I think there's a pretty deep connection between that and what I'd like to study this afternoon about revelation, about a sense of revelation. So in my Shabbat morning teaching today, I shared this notion of oracle and prophecy and mediated prophecy. In short, sorry to spoil it, but I guess it's not recorded anywhere, so I'm not spoiling anything. I'll share with you if you weren't here for it, that the notion of direct prophecy may have been very uncomfortable to our rabbinic forebearers because of 2 limitations. One is that it would seem that when one, if one needed to receive prophecies directly from God, then the likelihood of ever hearing God's voice again is much slimmer than if it might be possible that there are people on this planet who have open pathways to God, whether in the form of an ancient oracle or the form of someone who feels that they have or has ascribed to them the power of nu'ah, the power of prophecy, that if those people walk this planet, then it's many times multiplied the possibility that we'll encounter a teaching directly from God, because God does not appear to speak to human beings directly anymore. But it does seem as though there's a godly way that's manifest through certain people and certain teachings in the world. So I think that's part of the discomfort that they're wrestling with, no pun intended, lots of wrestling in these parshas. And then the second thing is this idea that prophecies or visions are exceedingly hazy and quite cryptic in that it's not possible to understand a prophecy until the end of one's life and looking back. And I made a nice Wicked reference and the notion of the Wicked Witch of the West, as Stephen Schwartz very Jewishly characterizes her. She celebrates in a song at the very beginning of the show, though the vision is hazy, it seems that one day there'll be a celebration all throughout Oz to do with me. Of course, that celebration is the celebration of her death. Ding dong, the witch is dead, for all who have seen Wizard of Oz. But she has the vision, this hazy vision, that she's going to be celebrated. It's just she can't know until after she's gone that celebration will be a celebration of relief that the Wicked Witch of the West is dead. So both of these notions are alive and well already. I was analyzing them in the past Parsha, this idea that visions themselves often do not come unmediated, but rather mediated through prophecy and oracle, and also, and dream, which will become relevant here, and also this idea that visions and prophecies do not necessarily come with any sense of clarity, but rather are understood after the fact with a great deal of sharpness of hindsight.
It's also, remember, they're the rabbi's rival. In other words, the rabbinic authority is the authority of interpretation.
Right.
And that is an indirect authority from the divine
Right.
revelation. And if they get it directly from the divine, and you have that with the oven
Of Tanur. The oven of Tanur. Of Achnai.
of Achnai
Yeah.
oven. In other words, the rabbis don't want that rival
That's right.
for authority.
Right. So this is also a political issue within Israel. That's right. That's right. So it's a political issue within the Jewish people as well, because the notion that there's a limitation to the power of the prophets is helpful for the balance of power within the people, because of course the rabbinic people want the rabbinic authority of any generation wants ultimately for the interpretive authority to rest with them. And how do they get their authority? Study. Now, we're going to leave that logical, wonky readership land and enter back directly into the notion of dreamy interpretations and revelation, which is where we'll be for this Parsha Vayetze, and all the way through the story of Joseph, of course. Because Joseph, too, is one who is given revelatory dreams and prophecies. By the way, similar to I'm still going to be proud of this Wicked reference, but similar to this pop culture reference in Wicked, right? Of course, Joseph's visions as well seem very clear to him, but in hindsight, they aren't at all what they were at first. That clarity of vision doesn't even come into play before our main character in Vayetze becomes very uncomfortable with the vision that he's been given. Where is Jacob when he has a vision of angels and a ladder and everything that's referenced at the beginning of Parshat Vayetze? Where is he? He's in a place called Beit El or Bethel. And what is he doing while he receives this vision? He's asleep. So we hear about the vision. We're actually witness with a narrative voice to the vision that he has. And then he awakens, but he doesn't awaken relieved or happy. We don't know what Rivka's response was to the revelation, but there is a presumed contentedness, as if the text has answered the question that we know that she has. What's happening in my belly? Oh, there are two nations fighting. By the way, I don't know how content I would be if that was the explanation that I got, but at least it would have given her an explanation. Yaakov has a deep, whatever the opposite of satisfaction is, he has perhaps a deep distress about this revelation. But the distress at the revelation isn't because of the content of what he's told. He's not being told that something is going to happen that's so disturbing that he can't stand it. Instead, he's uncomfortable about the way that he received this revelation. I want us to sit in that discomfort with him, and we're going to use the Or HaChaim to give us a little bit of clarity on what that discomfort might be. And we're going to follow that line all the way down into this idea of the state that we're supposed to be in when we are encountering God. Or HaChaim. So when Yaakov says, Yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh, there is God in this place. Backing up a second to the verse, 28th chapter, 16th verse. Vayikatz Yaakov Mishnato. Jacob woke up from his sleep state. Vayomer, and he said, Achen. And what can Achen mean? I would usually translate it as thus. But here, there's something else happening. What does the translation tell us here? Surely. So why does it say surely and not thus? It seems that achein is meant to be an intensifier. We would call it an intensifier, or something that underscores the intensity of the experience, as if it were. It's not quite onomatopoeia, but as if it were an exclamation. Achein, right? Sure, like as if it were an intense expression of emotion. Achein. Yesh Adonai b'makom hazeh. God is in this place. Va'anochi lo yadati. And I did know or didn't know? Did not know. Lo yadati, and I didn't know. So what would you expect if somebody woke up from a dream with the visions that Jacob was given? The angels ascending the ladder, descending the ladder. What are the range of emotions that one might experience awakening from what appeared to be a divine prophecy or revelation to him? Well, he says I screwed up. What are our other options besides I screwed up, Irv?
Do I need to go see a doctor?
And I want to go see a doctor. What's happening?
I want to see a therapist.
Or a therapist. Okay, good. What else? Yeah, Warren? I want to know what it means, right? Maybe go and run to somebody who can help you interpret it.
There may be another explanation, which is that his concept of God was linked to the land, and here he's leaving the land, but there is still God.
Right. So what Michael's pointing out is that there's a discomfort that he's leaving the land and God seems to be present, and all the way up and through the prophetic book that we have about Jonah, there is an abiding sense that God actually exists is actually linked to place. It's only after the book of Jonah, which is very late, that we get this notion that God can be present in places other than the place, hamakom, or in the place in which Israelites are dwelling. So that might be really, that might be putting him in a shaky place. What else might, I'm going to,
He also is in a shaky place. In other words, he's going into exile. He's leaving his home. He has a brother who might kill him. He's going
Right.
to a place unknown.
he's in a shaky place, he's on a journey.
It's the opposite of Abraham's sense, in which God tells him to take the journey, and I'm going to make something of you.
Right.
This is the opposite. I'm going and I've lost everything.
So Abraham gets this revelation, and it's a certainty that Abraham can carry forward with a sense of fortitude because God has told him to go forward. He's doing what God has told him to do. Jacob, on the other hand, is on his way to what might be a very violent reunion with a very angry twin, and he's in a very shaky place. And I don't know what kind of dreams you all have when you're in a very stressed state, but I imagine that this is the kind of dream that one might have. I'll say opposite of that. This is one of the few. Oh yeah, sure, Joel.
God says, I will protect you.
God says, I will protect you. That's correct. And can you tell people what page they can follow along in the, you have the Eitz Chaim there or different? Do you have the Eitz Chaim there?
No, he says,
Tell him what page.
what?
The page.
Oh, okay. I'm not in this. I was not in.
In 167, all right, we got a reference point here. Great. So we got it. 167, Joel. So he says, God says, I'm with you. I will protect you. Right.
I mean, it seems like if somebody is worried and nervous, and then God's self says, don't worry, I'm here for you, I'll protect you.
Sure.
It's going to be okay. So I don't know why you would wake up in a panic or be disturbed. It's a wonderful, warm feeling you should have.
Great. So this is where I am too, Joel. It's a wonderful, warm feeling he should have. It's Thanksgiving weekend, so the word gratitude is on the brain. I'll just say I might have a bit of gratitude that I was chosen to be the recipient of a revelation, a vision, a dream that connected me directly to God. It's still the very rare case that anyone would get a vision. And I wonder in their family, the lore of the generations of the family, if there was a question mark within each of the next birthright holders, by rights or by not rights, if they wondered, will God ever speak to me? I imagine I would experience a great deal of relief at God finally speaking with me. But that's definitely not the experience that the narrator of our text lets us know by giving us an actual quote from Yaakov, who says, God was in this place and I did not know it. Pause on that for a second, parenthetically. It's possible that we're reading those emotions into it. It's possible that the surprise is quite joyful. No? Oh my God, God was in this place. And I didn't even know it. Is that possible, Warren? It's intriguing to Warren that he slept on a stone. Okay. Sure. Right. Right. Maybe God did put him into a trance and it wasn't sleep at all. And maybe that was unsettling to him. Maybe the stone itself, right, was the unsettling thing. Right. All of these things make sense to me. The hardness of a stone, the discomfort, all makes sense to me in terms of the way that I would directly read the text. The rabbinic figures from about the 5th or 6th century onward seem to think that the distress comes from a place that we haven't yet mentioned, which is a distress that he had not properly prepared for this revelation, that he did not come prepared for this revelation, which is a very interesting and specific kind of distress. I think it's like the 1,000 times more powerful distress of showing up to synagogue and thinking it's fine that you're just there in jeans and then someone invites you to get up and lead or take an aliyah, right? You're like, I didn't even know I'd be asked to take an aliyah, and here I am in jeans. I can't think of any other comparative experience there, or perhaps, more pointedly like at such an experience at, say, the Kotel or something. But this idea that he came and he wasn't prepared is very distressing to him. The Orach Chaim, I'll do some of the text in Hebrew and some in English. I'll skip to over a few parts of the Orach Chaim here. When Jacob said, Yesh Hashem ha'makom hazeh, God's in this place, he meant that God is present here in this place all the time. Other places, that's not true. This is why God wanted Jacob to spend the night there in order to communicate with him there. But Jacob, he apologized for not having prepared himself for divine revelation. Had he been aware of the significance of this site, he would surely have done so. And then the Orach Chaim makes an assertion. Prophecy requires that the recipient of that prophetic message is prepared mentally. Prophecy requires preparation. And maybe the worry comes from the fact that if Jacob had prepared himself to become a recipient of this message, then he wouldn't have been, it would have been ve'efshar im haya mechin atzmo. If he had actually prepared himself properly, then perhaps he wouldn't have been asleep when the revelation came. Maybe he wouldn't have gone to sleep if he knew it was such a holy site, right? It's like, why would I take a nap in such a place where I'm going to get a revelation from God? I wouldn't go to sleep. Instead, I would have been awake for this prophecy if I had prepared myself right. And then I might have been awake. Perhaps this is what's being bemoaned in this verse. And I brought the Orach Chaim because it also quotes Rashi, our 11th to 13th century commentator, who explains that Jacob meant that if he had known the holy nature of that site, he wouldn't have gone to sleep whatsoever. And if that were the only meaning of Jacob's words, that we could say to Rashi that Jacob then would not have experienced all the promises God made to him during his dream. So in other words, there's a little bit of a tension between these 2 points. On the one hand, maybe he should have been awake and prepared himself to receive this prophecy, and he shouldn't have slept on it. But on the other hand, what? Why is it so important that he slept? Because maybe he needed to be asleep to receive the prophecy. And that's what I want to explore together. Maybe the sleep was the important part. Maybe he was supposed to be asleep all along. And that feeling that we've done something wrong, but in fact, we've been doing exactly what was needed all along is a very, very familiar feeling. I think it's also known as Jewish guilt, right? The notion that I did something very, very wrong, even when the evidence is quite to the contrary. That's where I want us to sit with this. The evidence is to the contrary. He did receive a prophecy from God, and yet he wakes up immersed in guilt, apparently. But what if he was supposed to be asleep? And that's how one receives a prophecy. A brief pause on the Shnei Luchot Abrit, who has something very interesting to offer on this point, and says that there is a hint in this verb, yud, shin, kaf, bet, in this laying down. What is that verb? Where do we know that verb from? What is that verb about? Yud, shin, kaf, bet. What is that? Shchiva. What is this? It's a... Right. It's Yud Shin, and it's the idea of, right, oh, that's interesting, that with an ayin in there, it would be like Yaakov, kind of. Yeah, we've got the kof, but still. Yeah, that's very interesting. And it's the notion of sleepiness, right, of laying down and of sleepiness, but it doesn't just mean that. That's what I'm digging at. Later on in the Torah, what is this verb going to come to have meaning? What other meaning is acquired by this word? When one lays down with someone. Not just sex, but something even more so. Are there any weddings in the Torah? Apparently. Are there any weddings? There is a mention of divorce. Any mention of wedding? Right. You literally lay with someone as a means of acquisition, right? So there's something really intimate about this laying down. Literally, it refers to an intimacy. And in fact, the Shnei Luchot Abrit is going to infer that the notion of that laying down and the trading of the mandrakes and having that extra night, that basically that's a connection with Leah, this notion of the laying down being a means to receive something very important, right? I won't get into the graphic nature of things, but basically laying down is also an act of receiving, because this is how the seed of Yisrael is proliferated. But in addition to that, he offers that there is a little bit of a hint in this Vayashkev or Vayashkov, that this idea that's present in there is a little bit of an acronym. Yesh Sachar. Yesh Sachar. And what is Sachar? There is a reward. Okay, Yesh Sachar. So when one lays down, that one is privy to some sort of a reward. And what is the inference? That there is some sort of a reward and a laying down for Jacob? What is his reward? He lays down, and what does he get? He lays down, and what does he receive overnight? A prophecy, a vision, a connection to the divine. So the rabbinic voices on this text want to come and counter or comfort, or both, Jacob's apparent panic. If, in fact, there is panic in the verse, oh my gosh, I didn't even know it, I wasn't prepared, I should have been prepared for the prophecy. What the rabbis want to come to do is to say, no. The later you get, the more deeply you get into Kabbalistic and Musar voices, the more strong this sort of counter-narrative emerges, that it's in fact the exact thing that one needs to do, to lay down and to receive a prophecy and to be in a kind of dream state. Does anyone know what musicians call it when they sit down at their instrument and the music just starts to come out of them? Is anyone familiar with that?
Jam session.
What's that?
It's jam session. I say improvising.
Improvising or a jam session. But what do you call that moment in improvising or a jam session When you stop thinking and the music just starts coming. Flow. That's exactly right. They call it flow. And I don't know if anybody here knows this, but my degree before I came here from American University, go Eagles, my degree is in jazz studies. So I studied a lot about the history of jazz, and flow is an inherent spiritual notion that comes out of mostly the African American community, but actually out of a marriage of the African American community and the Jewish community as they produced this sound that emerged from spirituals and eventually gets into the height of jazz. Really, jazz peaks, climaxes in like 60s and 70s. And in that time, flow emerges as a kind of semi-spiritual state. Flow is a way of being present to a moment that asks you to leave the logical aside. Stop reading the notes on the page and let the music just flow. Psychedelics in the 1960s and 70s also contributed to this notion that the more that one could leave the angst of being present in the body, the more that one could give oneself over to the presence in that spirituality of the music just coming, that the music itself, like a prophecy, would come through and be able to be present through someone's fingers, right, on a trumpet or on a piano.
Musicians, composers have experienced both agony and ecstasy. They've experienced both ends of it. Great music has been composed where it didn't exactly flow. They really had to struggle with it themselves.
That's exactly right, Rosa. Flow is not guaranteed. Great musicians struggle. That's absolutely right. So how do you get to that flow state? I'm going to argue that going into a dream state, laying oneself down, is the closest act we have of completely giving ourselves over to the flow of the universe. Because when we, as we say in Adonalambia Doaf Kidruchi, when we just tuck our souls into the hands of God and say, I'm going to sleep, what dreams may come, right? What dreams may come may become great revelations. Yeah, Warren.
Well, I will say that I've had amazing dreams where I've heard like amazing music, symphonies and everything.
Yeah.
And then I woke up and I said, that was my dream.
Right. You've dreamt great symphonies while asleep, while in a completely unencumbered and unburdened state. You didn't know if it was coming from somewhere else or perhaps even from within you. And I'll say, I think that too is the great fear. I was going to leave this for the very end, but I'll say I think that this perhaps is the great fear of Jacob, that if there is any fear present, it's that having this revelation in a dream leaves him with the question mark as to whether it was a dream or a revelation. Presumably, like all human beings, Jacob dreamt all the time. Don't we all dream, at least on occasion? And I imagine there would be a great deal of anxiety never quite knowing if it was a dream or a prophecy. And that had he been awake for that prophecy, he would have known because he wouldn't have been asleep. And perhaps that's a little bit what's being hinted at here. I want to move us to the last sources so that we can then bench and do Mariv in time, though it feels like 10 p.m. and it's only 5:06. Briefly, Rabbi Menachem Nachum, great name, of Chernobyl, who lived till just about the cusp of the 19th century, mentions something about when flow does not come. He doesn't call it flow, but when this connection to the divine does not come. And he says the greatest example that we have of this as a people is when we were leaving Egypt. Because, of course, Mitzrayim refers to Metzar, which is a narrowness and a narrow opening place, a place of great narrow, he says narrow da'at. The people's consciousness or awareness, their da'at, was diminished like the sea itself, like the narrow sea, Metzar Yam. For the stream of awareness that flows from the sea of wisdom, Rabbi Jonathan Slater translated this, but I thank him and thanked him for such a brilliant connection to this idea of flow. Stream of awareness that flows from the sea of wisdom was constricted and diminished, and they had not yet achieved an expansive consciousness. But with Yetziat Mitzrayim, they came out of that narrow place, and their consciousness of God grew and expanded. It was an expansiveness that grew in that place. So where does flow not come through? In great narrowness and closed-mindedness and a feeling of distance from the divine. Where does flow just flow? In that great expansiveness.
That's why it's involved with sleep.
Exactly. Freud's notion, as Michael points out, is the suspension of restraint, and that sleep is a great time of deep personal understanding and reflection for all the reasons that we're mentioning, because the defenses are all down and one can simply let the flow in. Rabbi Shefa Gold, who most people know from her chants, including Oziv Vizim Ratya, on this very notion of leaving the sea, leaving the narrowness of Egypt, she writes about Vayetze, Jacob's journey is blessed at its outset with a dream and with a moment of awakening. In the dream, God shows Jacob the stairway that connects the realms of heaven and earth and then gives him a promise. Through this blessing, we ourselves become that stairway, she says, that connection, with our feet planted in the foundation of the earth and our crowns open to the expanse of heaven. Through us, the divine flow pours down into the earthly realms. Through us, the pleasure and miseries of earthly experience are offered up to the divine expanse. When I become available to this flow, this is Shefa speaking herself as a teacher of mindfulness, I am awakened to the most awesome and transformative truth. God was here all along, and I didn't know it. This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. And by this, she means her. Her presence is that gate. In this very moment and this place here where I stand is at once God's home and the doorway to all realms. Our journey brings us the blessing of Zeh, this. In becoming fully present to this moment here and now, the presence of God is revealed. In there, you hear the tension that she is presenting to us that I think is the ultimate human tension when it comes to accessing the divine. Because, of course, at the end, what does she say? It's in becoming fully present to this moment here and now. But what's the opposite of being fully present to this moment here and now? Going to sleep or letting things go completely and giving oneself over to the flow. It is the human tension of being in that state of knowing, oh, I knew that this was going to be a place where I would get a prophecy, and the giving over entirely that lets that godness and that divineness flow right in. Finally, closing up with Aviva Zornberg as a means of kavanah, of intentionality for Ma'ariv. She has a brilliant teaching. I brought Aviva, I think, a few weeks ago for us to learn from, or maybe that was a Shabbat morning teaching, but I've been reading her texts, particularly preparing for Pesach this year. Like, I'm starting early. And she writes something that is meant to inspire us to take a completely different look at what Ma'ariv, Aravit, is as a service. Why Ma'ariv and why this Parsha? Who is meant to be the progenitor, the inventor, the person who is connected most with Ma'ariv? Well, we'll see in a second. The night at Bethel is the heart of his journey. The dream interim between Be'ersheva and Haran. There he dreams and wakens with the words, surely God is in this place and I did not know. He wakens, that is, with a deep conviction that he did not know. He has brushed against a knowledge that could only arise from the way of ignorance. In such profound shifts of experience, the revelation is the not knowing. The sense of previous darkness itself intimates a dawning light. In a startled moment, Jacob recognizes the shape of his own ignorance. Surely God is this place. Why is it so unexpected that God should be in this place? What strange beauty has just touched him? Mount Moriah becomes a place in Jacob's mind, uncannily overwhelming him, just as the sudden sunset becomes his personal syncope, a kind of blackout, which moves him to a new genre of prayer, Aravit, the evening prayer, the prayer said in darkness. This is the place he unwittingly bypassed on his journey. How could I have forgotten to pray? In other words, what Aviva Zornberg says is the thing, how did he not know? What is the not knowing? A sudden realization that he hadn't taken a moment to say a few prayers. And this, she says, is the moment of inventing Aravit. I suggest that for Jacob, the Akedah, that traumatic memory, is the unreachable place. His prayers cannot find inspiration in the thought of that terror. But having unwittingly traveled past Mount Moriah, guilt assails him. How could I have passed by the place where my fathers prayed without praying there? He sets himself to return and finds himself abrasively hurtling against that place, that darkness. A new prayer is born, Aravit, which represents an unimaginable possibility that divine light can be revealed in the dark. The world of darkness, of sleep and dream, of loss of consciousness, vulnerability, passivity, all of this is associated with the Akedah and his father's helplessness, from which he has long recoiled. Arvit, Ma'ariv service, the one that we're about to say after we bench Birkat Hamazon, is in a category of prayer called Reshut. In other words, it's not optional, but it's not optional. It exists in a time where the core elements of it might have been said in other times and other places. In other words, if we're saying Shema twice a day, why not just say Shema when we go to sleep? The why not is this teaching. The why not is our historical sensibility that we can't pass by an opportunity, an important opportunity to pray, and that we take advantage of the evening time, a time where darker thoughts creep in and perhaps traumas return to us and we feel more vulnerable and those nights get longer this time of year, even as we're reading Parshat Vayetze. And we give ourselves over to a sense of flow state because we can let go of the objective named necessity of praying, the Shachrit and the Mincha services, which are such core services to the obligations that we need to pray. We just have to pray. We got to pray in the morning. We got to pray in the afternoon. But in the evening, we need prayer. We need to pray, representative of the entirety of this amazing divine experience that Jacob had and a moment of thought that how could he have been past such an important place? How could he find himself in such a vulnerable state and not having taken time to actually reach out and pray? I hope that you find yourself occasionally, perhaps tonight even, using Arvit, using Mariv, and using the evening time as a place for wild wanderings of your consciousness, to let things just go. Maybe that means sitting at the piano and letting music flow out and seeing what comes as dream state comes closer and closer to the evening. Or maybe it means literally that Mariv is a time where you permit yourself to wander much more as you're in that prayer state, more so than you would in a Shachri or a Mincha service, giving yourself over and getting that much closer in a connection to those ancestors of ours who found themselves inadvertently in the presence of God. Shabbat Shalom. Bruchim to you, and I'll invite somebody. Who's someone who? Okay, you're going to lead us in Birkat Hamazon. Is that your volunteer? Great, fantastic. Birkat Hamazon can be found in the benchers for all those who ate the foodstuffs that would require you to say that. It can be found on page 47 or 42.
487 in the Lev Shalem.
487, right? But in the booklets, is it? Some of them are 42 and some are 47. We'll do Shir Hamalot, the Zimu, and the invitational, and then go into quiet recitation after that. אז ימלא שחקנו, ושמי הרינה, אז יאמרו הגויים, הגדיל אדוני לעשות עמך, הגדיל אדוני לעשות עמנו, היינו שמחים, שירו באדוני את שביתנו, רבים בנגב, הזורים בדימה, ברינה יצורו, הלכים לבחו, נושא משך הזרה, בו יבוא ברינה, נושא אלומותיו.
חבריי נברך,
יהי שמברך מצווה עולם.
נברך לכם שלחנו משלום.
ברוך ה' שחלנו משלום ובחיינו.
ברוך ה' שלחנו משלום ובחיינו.
Baruch Shemo, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Adonai haolam kulo v'tubo, v'chein b'chesed u'rachamim, hu notein lechem l'chol basar ki le'olam chasdo, u'tubo hagadol, tamid lo chasar lanu ve'lo chasar lanu, Chazon elam ba'ed
If you haven't yet finished saying Birkat Hamazon, please continue at your own pace. The evening service for Saturday night begins on page 264. We rise, and then after the Baruch Hu, we can be seated.
V'huruchu mikabrabam lo yashkit b'bala shivahu lo yakol chamato. Adonai Hashem Elkeinu b'yom kareinu. Baruchu et Adonai ha'mevorach.
Mayru, Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Barach le'olam va'ed.
May be seated.
Ma'aver yom u'mevi layla ma'avdil ben yom u'mevi layla Adonai so shemo. El chai v'chayim tavidin lachaleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim.
Amen.
V'yahavacha al tashim menu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Adonai Elohechem Amen. Malchuto barason kibilu elhem Moshe b'nei Yisrael lachanu shira v'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam Yikamocha nedar b'kodesh narati loto sefele malchut karu v'necha b'kei yam l'fnei Moshe ze eli anu v'yamru ונאמר כי פדה אדוני יעקב וגלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Bottom of 267.
ושמור צאתנו עלינו לחיים ולשלום טובי עד עולם ברוך אתה אדוני שומר עמו ישראל לעד. ברוך אתה לעולם אמן. כי המלכות שלך היא ולמעט המלך בכבוד כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה ברוך אתה אדוני המלך בכבודו תמיד ילך עלינו לעולם ועד ועל כל מעשיו יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה יעמוד יברך וירצה וימליך מלכותו בחייכנו וימיכנו חי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה בזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן יהי שמר לעולם ועד יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר בשמו מן נעשה Yitadar v'yital v'yital al shmei kudisha. Ve'lam min kol bechata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechmata damei ram b'yama v'yimru amen.
Amen. The whispered private Amidah for Saturday evening is found in Lev Shalem on page 270.
And it's Ya'aleh v'yavo.
Oh, and thank you for reminding me. I announced it this morning. Yale V'Yavo. Yeah, we're now in Rosh Chodesh, so please do not forget to make inclusions for Rosh Chodesh in the middle of the Amidah. You can find that on page 277. Again, we began the Amidah on 270. If you haven't yet completed your own private Amidah, please continue at your own pace. Chatzi Kaddish is on 279, after which we can be seated.
Yigdal v'yikadash mirabah.
Amen.
V'yamad yivrachur tev yom nichmachot tev b'chayechon v'yamechon v'chaylecho beit Yisrael ba'agalav v'zman kari v'yimru amen. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yishmamit naseh. Yitadar v'yital al shmei kudisha. Elam min kol b'chata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechamata. Damei ram b'yama v'yimru amen. V'hino amad Adonai.
You be seated. We're in the middle of 279.
Yikraini v'enehu imo anochi b'tzara achaltzel v'achabdehu orech v'mazbehu v'arei b'shuati orech v'mazbehu v'arei b'shuati.
We turn back in our Cedar reading to page 216, and we turn to the second paragraph on that page and continue through page 217.
Kadosh 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Tzvaot Melech Haaretz Kavodo. Vati Yisrael Ruach Vashma Acharai Kol Rash Gadol Adonai Mimkomo Adonai Imloch Le'olam Roeh. V'yiftechu b'chodesh mecha ki lo zafta doshecha Adonai Adonai chavetz mantziko yadil Torah v'yadir.
Page 280.
Yikadal v'kadash shmir Rabba
Amen.
Yamad yivrachir tei v'yamlich v'achotei b'chayechon v'yamecha l'chayrecho beit Yisrael Ba'agalav v'zman kariv v'yimru Amen.
Meni hishim hira b'bar ha'chil ha'mehaya.
Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yitparlish mami naseh Yitadar v'yitalav v'yitalal shmei l'kudisha
Berichu.
V'chol min kol b'chata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechamata da'ami ram v'yamav v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Titkabel sodhon v'vahon l'chol Yisrael kodam avoni v'shmaya v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehi shalom araba min shemai v'chaim aleinu v'yalkol Yisrael v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yaseh shalom v'imramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yalkol Yisrael v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Hagatu b'taratecha Adonai mloch le'olam v'ev v'nemar v'ya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz v'yom hu yanai echad u'shmo echad.
Just before Mourner's Kaddish, I want to take a moment to share that I'm not sure how many people here are aware yet, but we have a member who's been a part of our community from a distance for the past 4 years named Tybal. And sometimes you hear her voice in a kind of ethereal way because she's online most times. It's very possible Tybal's on right now. Actually, Warren, can you see on the screen if Tybal's there in the list? No, I don't see it. Okay, got it. So thank you for checking. So unfortunately, Tybal's spouse of many years passed away rather suddenly. It was unexpected. He'd had a difficult diagnosis, but then passed away rather unexpectedly and suddenly. And because of the circumstances, there are not yet details for a funeral and for Shiva. But of course, we extend condolences to her. And as soon as there are plans, part of the Shiva is that she hopes that she'll spend. Oh, she is there. Thank you for, there's an icon. So Tybal, I'll speak directly to you and say this community is as much your community as if you were standing here in this room, as if you were here with us. We miss you, even not having known you in person in this room, and extend just heartfelt condolences on any loss, especially a loss like this one. And we will be here for you and waiting when when Shiva time comes. And it's very likely that Tybal will mark some of that Shiva right here with Evening Minyan in our community. She's a part of our daily Minyan, both mornings and evenings, almost every single day of the week, 365 days a year. So just because you're far in distance doesn't mean that you're far from our hearts, our minds, or even the room right now. Mourner's Cottage can be found for all those who are in the cycle of mourning on page 282.
Yikadal v'yikadash shmei Rabba v'yalma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael b'agala v'zman kariv v'yimru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba marach le'olam l'mei Maya Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitpa'ar, Yitramam, Yitnaseh, Yitadar, Yitalev, Yitalal, Shmei Dekudisha, Brichu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran b'oma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen.
Please rise for Hatikva, and we'll follow that with Havdalah.
Kol od ba'leva penima, Nefesh Yehudi Homiya, Ufate Mizrach Kadima, Ayin Letzion Sophia, Olavda Tikvatenu, Atikvat Shnot Alpayim, Li'otam chofshi be'atzeinu Eretz Tzia v'Yerushalayim. Li'otam chofshi be'atzeinu Eretz Tzia v'Yerushalayim.
Yesha Koach, Joel, thank you for leading us in memory of your mother and in general as a great leader of Mariv. We are going to do Havdalah in just a moment. A reminder that it is indeed Rosh Chodesh. Thank you. It's Rosh Chodesh tomorrow and the day after as well, which means that services begin at 8 o'clock, no earlier than usual on a Sunday, but then on Monday morning we'll begin at 7:15. Warren, is Mike Harris on the list? Thank you for being my scout. Gary back, but not Mike. Okay, great. So just a note that the cat may be out of the bag in part, but just to invite all of you, if you haven't yet gotten that invitation by word of mouth, that we're going to be honoring Michael Harris with a great deal of gratitude this coming Thursday evening, and changing to Tain Talmud Tyler. I'm very excited as a change in liturgy that night too. But more importantly and more excitingly, we're going to be honoring Mike for the incredible service that he does for this community many days of the year. Please do your best to still keep it in the realm of surprise, not discussing it with him. But if you can at all make it to Minyan on this Thursday evening, it'll be at 4:30 p.m. We hope to shower him with a great deal of deserved praise. Havdalah can be found, if you want to follow along, on page 283. Yanai na nai 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 yanai nai 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 yanai yanai na nai 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 yanai na nai 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 Heftach velo hefchain, Ki ozi v'zi b'raja, Adonai v'yehi li Yeshua, U'shavtem mayim v'sason, V'maynei ha'Yeshua, L'Adonai ha'Yeshua, Ha'lecha v'irchatecha sela, Adonai Tzivaot Imanu Miskav Lainu Elohei Yaakov Sela Adonai Tzivaot Ashrei Adam Boteach Bach Adonai Hoshia HaMelech Yaneinu V'yom Koreinu LaYehudim HaTahora V'simcha v'sason V'kar Kein Ti'elainu Kasi Yeshua Tesa Uv'shem Adonai Hekra Yainenai, 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 Savri, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borai, Peri hagafe. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borai, Minei besamim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borai, V'orei ha'esh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ha'mavdil ben kodesh lechol ben or lechoshech, ben Yisrael ha'amim, ben yom ha'shvi'i, l'sheshet yemei ha'maseh. Baruch atah Adonai mavdil ben kodesh lechol. Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol, chatoteinu yimcho, zareinu v'chaspeinu yard beyard b'kachol, v'hakochavim b'layla. Zareinu v'chaspeinu yard beyard b'kachol, v'hakochavim b'layla. Shavua tov, 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 everyone. Have a wonderful week. Sweet and peaceful week. Eliyahu, Hagiladi, Imera, Eyameinu, Yavo, Eleinu, Imashiach ben David, Imashiach ben David.
So, Rabbi Chani,
Hi, Hagar.
Table.
Table, Susan.
Yeah,
So sorry
so
for
sorry,
your
Table.
loss.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. Anyway, as I say, I don't like this widow stuff.
I don't blame you.
So sorry. Oh,
Yeah, anyway.
mm.
And we didn't say goodbye because he was going in the emergency room, but we thought he was having a reaction to a new painkiller he started. Like, not even a huge reaction. So, no clue.
Oh, oh,
Yeah.
So sorry.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Yep.
yep. So I'll have that all around. Is your son with you?
Yes, he actually had been in Montreal on a research trip, and he just got in today.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Wednesday before Thanksgiving is, I'll just say, makes things more complicated.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Including Alan visited his 96-year-old father every day in a nursing home, and he was in charge of like scheduling aides and whatever. And Alan's father doesn't know yet because I can't go to the nursing home. I didn't want him told by phone. He can't hear by phone. And
Mm-hmm.
his rabbi was out of town for Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so
Oh,
anyway,
my goodness.
yeah, figured out with doctors the safest way to tell him. But that's part of why there are all sorts of things going on. But that's part of why the funeral is much more delayed than usual.
Uh-huh. Right. Oh.
Right. Anyway.
Switch the video. Tybal.
Yes, AJ.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. Let me see if I got up the right one. Oh no, that's not the right one, but that works.
Yes, I got a very strange email right before Shabbat, and I wasn't sure what the meaning was, but I checked with Rabbi Rambam, who confirmed what I feared. I'm so very sorry for your loss.
Yeah, thank you. I had asked Rabbi Rambam not to send it out to the class. I was just explaining because Jewish community is so intertwined, and Alan's father doesn't know yet.
I understand. Actually, no, he honored that. He did not send it. I think I was on a separate list between you and Robin.
Oh yeah, probably. And actually, it's complicated. Alan has a brother. Haven't told the brother yet either until the father's told first.
Of course.
It's but anyway, my child's going to go to the nursing home to tell him when a medical person is there. Just in case. I don't know if you heard, he's almost 96. And his big thing every day was when my spouse would go visit. So anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's just shocking, though.
Yeah, I have to move back in order to hear
Yeah,
you.
it is.
But-
Actually, Alan's best friend of long.
Okay. Someone is controlling us. I don't know who.